5 minutes.
Thank you. Minister, this budget is politically clever, but it's also socially and economically foolish. It's a budget that should look to the next decade and the next generation, and instead it looks to the next election. It's a triumph of incrementalism, and it lacks what George Bush Sr. once called the vision thing. Where are we at right now? The economy is growing, rents are soaring, people can't afford to buy their own homes, the costs of living are rising, and unexpected exchequer revenues are coming in. This is exactly the situation Ireland was in during the bubble. Now, the response then from Fianna Fáil was to cut taxes and underinvest in social infrastructure. And that is exactly what we're seeing here, with the greatest benefits of the tax cuts going to the highest earning households. So what's the result of this budget going to be? The cost of living will continue to rise. The tax base will be less stable. Investment in infrastructure, in public services and support for enterprise will be insufficient. Job creation will not be what it could have been with a more visionary and job-friendly budget. Inequality will continue, with less opportunity available to future generations. Now, there was a lot of grand talk from the two ministers earlier on today, but let's take a look at the numbers, because they tell a very different story. This budget allocates €18 million to healthcare. That's 0.1% of the healthcare budget. This budget allocates €24 million to education. That's 1/3 of 1% of the education budget. Now, this budget gives someone earning €175,000 €1,800 back, which is great for them, but that doesn't create jobs. What that does is increase the wealth of BMW shareholders. What creates jobs is investing in education. What creates jobs is investing in infrastructure. And that's what this budget should have done. Now, we don't know, Minister, if this is a regressive budget, because this government for 4 years now has refused to provide Dáil Éireann, the body responsible for passing this budget, with incremental analysis and distributional analysis of what's in it. We'll find out afterwards. We do know from the ESRI that all 4 of this government's budgets so far have been regressive. And I'll be willing to take a bet with any government TD right now, before we see any analysis, that this budget will increase the gap between those who have the most and those who have the least in this country. So what would the Social Democrats have done differently? We set out a budget, Minister, yesterday, not for the next election, but for the next generation. We would set Ireland on a different path to what we see today. We would see a stable revenue base, high-quality public services, proper support for enterprise and local businesses, a housing approach that is stable and affordable, a republic in which every child truly has the opportunity to reach their potential. The Social Democrats' budget proposal is tax neutral. We would maintain the existing tax base, not erode it, in line with advice from a wide number of economists and institutions. We would improve the tax base. We would raise revenue via measures like excise and pension relief. And we would reduce the cost of living via progressive taxation measures, like lower USC for lower and middle income earners, an end to the water charge, and reduce local property tax for mortgage holders. And so we would support enterprise via a far greater tax credit than we saw here today for the self-employed. The Social Democrats have laid out a budget that has 5 times the additional capital investment that this government has put forward. We would invest €300 million in housing. We would invest €75 million in building out the primary care infrastructure. And we would target €1.1 billion at core sectors. In healthcare, for example, we would provide funding for 900 additional primary care staff, 40 million to alleviate the A&E crisis next year, and 35 million for mental health. In total, we would provide 170 million for healthcare versus the government's 18 million. So we would provide 10 times more money for healthcare than this government is providing next year. In education, we would provide 200 million versus the government's 24 million. Again, 9 or 10 times more. This government had a choice. to stabilise the tax base and to invest in the future. What we've seen today is very disappointing. It is Fianna Fáil in the bubble, and we're seeing it again now. Thank you.